Hi, I'm Mark Sumner, CEO and founder of Robertson Sumner. Welcome to the Channel Chat podcast, where we will share learnings, best practices and failures with some of the biggest names in the IT industry, all with the simple aim of being the go-to place for IT sales professionals and managers to learn from others with the ultimate goal of maximising performance and growing the channel. Hello, I'm Mark Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I have in the studio with me Davies, Chief Sales Transformation Officer for Sanda Training. How are we, David?
All good, Mark. Thank you. Thanks for having me today.
No, my pleasure. And also, you are the first author I have on the show of obviously making channel sales work, which we're going to talk about later. So that's going to be a very topical debate later. But the first question I ask everyone that comes onto the podcast show is, how did they get into the crazy world of sales, and how did you kick off?
It's a good question, Mark. I'll try and give you the best potted version I can after 35 years. So as a failed international DJ that got about as far as the Isle of Wight, I came home from summer holidays and my parents said, go get a job. And like the cocky young man I was, I walked down to the job centre and I came back with a job, got it that day, selling fresh and frozen fish for a living. For a company called Ross Fish, who I think are still around somewhere. And rapidly became their number one salesperson in the UK, which was the reverse of most people's sales jobs, because the more I sold, the more I packed. And the more I packed, the later I finished. And so when everybody else was going home at 3, I was still there. Great perks. Couple of years of doing that, and I eventually fell into the world of technology sales. I met a lady in a nightclub on a Friday night who said, I've got a job for you. And met her on the Sunday, started on the Monday. I'm going all Craig David here, but anyway. And that was really working in the OEM space. So we were building technology for companies like Samsung, right. Olivetti at the time, who stopped doing typewriters and doing PCs and Mesh and all sorts of other organisations, which took me to London. And then I became part of a management buyout of a company called KGB. We bought out the supplies division and turned that from a couple of 100,000 to something like 17 million by the time I left, with numerous divisions across London, fabulously successful. I then left them, having done pretty much everything I could, and went into what was called the dot-com bubble, and just walked around bursting people's expectations. I worked with some really good companies that should have been bigger than they were and struggled. I worked with some really bad companies that should never existed in the first place. And then over time, I was introduced to a couple of guys who were starting up an IT training company, a franchise for a company called Training Camp in the US. And we spent 13 years taking that franchise into our own business called Firebrand Training, which is where you and I met. 13 years in the fastest growing IT training company in the UK, covering 7 geographies. I spent much of my life traveling to those geographies. Again, same thing, done pretty much everything I possibly could. We built a phenomenal business.
Was that tech, selling into sort of tech training, or is it sales training? Or
IT training, project management, cybersecurity. We were really the lead out for cybersecurity training with the bigger vendors in that space. Microsoft partner, Oracle partner, Cisco partner, all the stuff you'd expect to see.
And this is classroom training, it's not online?
This was really residential training.
Right.
So taking people away from their working weeks, and training them typically in about half the time it would take with a traditional trainer. Right. But residential, very intensive, and massively successful, and still is. It's a fabulous business.
And what was the sort of USP in those days of that sort of business?
Ours was that we were one of the only training providers at the time that led in the training program to the certification the vendor did. And so getting those acronyms, an MCSE or a CISSP, it was residential and intensive, so you were training about half the time, but in a very intense way. And more than anything else, I think what stood us out from the crowd is our trainers weren't trainers; they were practitioners that were trained to train, not trainers taught to talk you through the slide decks.
Right.
And so we had a real holy trinity of focus, great trainers, and an end game to our training. And the fact that people could continue to come back for as many times they needed to until they nailed the cert. And the certs are the things that make a real difference to IT guys in terms of how they earn their money.
Okay, and you that was a sales role and you went into management there as well, didn't you?
Yeah, so I came in really we was only 3 of us when I started, so it's fairly difficult to call yourself a manager when it's just you and a mirror. But over time, my team, by the time I left, was 48 in all sorts of different geographies, plus mentoring our country managers. So we built a very successful business, and it continues to be incredibly successful, as it should do.
And what made you leave there?
Like I said, I think I was starting to get in people's way. I'd been there for 13 years. I think it's a long time to do anything. And the one thing I hadn't done is I hadn't worked for a big company. I've been working with big companies as a channel partner to Microsoft and others, but I'd never worked for a big company. And so I spent a couple of years with a company called LogMeIn, NASDAQ listed company, running their EMEA and really their international sales team. Both the inside business and then eventually took on the enterprise team.
So having worked for sort of small organisations throughout your career, what was the big change to work for a NASDAQ listed company?
It should have been a lot. But I think the reason I was hired is because of that small to medium sized business mentality. As a satellite of a large NASDAQ listed software company, you don't feel very different to Firebrand. I mean, I was managing the same number of people, very similar structure, a lot more reporting, a lot more late night calls because it's a US organisation, and I had a team down in Australia as well. But really, I mean, I guess the difference is just the weight of power of brand behind you. When you say the word LogMeIn, most people have heard of them. When you say the word Firebrand, if you're in IT, you've probably heard of us. Anywhere else, you probably haven't.
No, yeah.
So the brand carried much more weight. But in terms of day to day, not massively different.
No.
Not massively different, no. I mean, I deployed the same successful system I used at Firebrand to grow it to growing LogMeIn, and it was struggling when I joined it as an EMEA business.
You use the same system and talk us through that system. Is that a blueprint to you?
Yeah, well, I don't think it's a blueprint to me, but there are some cores to effective management. One of which is you're only as successful as your people. So firstly, hire really, really good people, the best possible people you can afford, and then give them all of your time and attention, or certainly as much as you can get away with. Regular one-to-ones that are removable rocks in your diary, that have a structure to the meeting itself, a structure to the outcome of the meeting, and a structure to the expectations as you're not around, what you're expecting them to do and what you're expecting them to bring back to you next week. It's having that more, better, different model of what can we be doing more of, what can we be doing better, or what can we be doing differently. And moreover, as a manager, it starts with I. What can I be doing better for you? What can I be doing better or more of or differently on your behalf? How do I get the best out of you? Because if I get the best out of you, I get the best for me anyway.
And how did you? So that model or that sort of methodology you've sort of talked about there. How did you be installed in that from yourself? How did you hear about that? How have you been trained into that, or is it something you've just come up with yourself?
I think there are two things at work. I've been very lucky throughout my career at times to have some really, really good mentors. I consider Rob at Firebrand as a friend and a mentor at the same time, that he taught me a lot about management style. He would argue I ignore quite a lot of it at times, but he taught me a lot about management style, and certainly taught me a lot about that committed, structured investment of time in others, that it isn't about you, it's about them. And she was very good at getting the best out of me, and that enabled me to get the very best out of my people, and I've carried that throughout my career. The currency of management is influence, and you can't influence without understanding, and you can't understand if you don't take the time to really understand what people are doing, where their goals are set, where they're going, what their personal motivators are, and aligning yourself with them. You'll get to your goals as a business far quicker if you focus on your people than if you focus on yourself.
We have a lot of people come into our business wanting career progression.
Right.
And the first thing they'll say to me is that there might be a salesperson, they say they want to go into management. Now, do you think the top salespeople should go into management, or have they got those skills, or do you think it's a certain set of skills and a certain person that should go into management, regardless if they've been successful in sales or not?
I considered myself a successful salesperson that was constantly accidentally thrust into management. I mean, most of the time, even when I was deliberately trying not to be a manager, I became one. I would join jobs saying, well, the last thing I want, I know I've been a manager, but I just want to focus on sales, just want to focus on me. And they'd hire some salespeople and say, could you look after them? And I'd forget to say, no, I'm And that's how you become a manager sometimes. And if you've got the attributes you're a good salesperson, you're a good people person, you're a good people leader, then it makes sense. But most salespeople aren't. Most good salespeople are very focused, which actually requires you sometimes to be quite selfish, quite independent, quite autonomous even. You get thrust into management and the only management style they have is just do what I did.
Yeah.
Well, if one size fit all, you'd all look like some people do. Depends how quickly they've lost their hair. But they'd all look, sound and feel the same, and it doesn't work like that in sales. And sales maybe when I first started out, it was one job, pick up the phone and sell stuff. But there are so many different avenues to sales.
What do you think a top salesman can do now? So if they've been really, really successful, they are selfish, they are focused, they're really, really good at that job, they probably haven't got the soft skills to go into management. Where do they go? Because we get a lot of frustrated top salespeople sort of saying, yeah, I've done it for 5 or 6 years, I've been successful, I don't want to keep on doing it, grinding out every year, I want to be recognized, I want to do something else. What are their options?
Well, I mean, there are 101 different options, but I typically, when somebody says, where do I go, ask them, why would you go? Management's tough. Management. Most people go into management and earn less money. Most top salespeople really struggle with that one. If you go into management, you earn less money. Okay, one of the indicators goes up and the other one probably goes down. Your frustrations about people's inability to sell isn't going to drive people and motivate them in any way, so that's a reason not to do it. People think, do you know what I think? I think management means something to your mum. I think you go home, it's a good dinner party story. I'm in management now. I mean, that's why most people are called account manager or new business account manager.
So their ego as well, isn't it? Their ego, they feel better they've got a promotion.
It's dinner party fodder. It doesn't mean anything. I mean, to most leaders that I've met and directors that I've met, don't tell people that's who they are.
Yeah. No, you're
They
right.
just talk about their business or their people or something else. They don't go leading in, I'm the managing director of a company. Management's a wonderful thing, but it's a cross between being a kindergarten teacher and a nightclub bouncer. It is. You've got this real conflict of interest going on, and it doesn't suit everybody. And what's worse, Mark, I think, is your great salesperson gets thrust into sales management. You've probably poured a lot of time, effort, books and training into him to make him a great salesperson, because none of us are naturals, no matter how much I think I am. But nobody's a natural manager. And do you know how much management training most sales managers get?
Yeah, 0.
Yeah, absolutely not a lot. But they're expected to go and perform it because they're good salespersons. I mean, that's naturally just translates into being brilliant at management, because they're not two totally different things. But they are. So
I hated management.
Problem.
I absolutely hated it, and I was appalling at it as well. Right. So I do not envy anyone trying to go into it. I think it's a real tough job. What do you sort of think are the top sort of 3 traits someone needs to be really? If the listeners listen to this and they think, yeah, I'm in sales, but I'd like to be in management. What's the top 3 traits they'd have to sort of think I could be a successful manager and make the transition?
I think last 4 years, certainly in the tech world, what I've seen, anybody that plays competitive sport and leads a competitive team-based sport is already managing and already a natural coach and a natural motivator. And so that's one of the things I now get my clients to look for. Have they played competitive sport to a good standard, and are they in some form of leadership role in that team? Because it teaches you a lot on the pitch in those short burst times, which is a little bit what sales is like sometimes. Short bursts of high intensity. They need to be organised. Really clear ability to manage their diary, and frankly, I used to colour code it, and there were anything in black was an immovable rock. So if somebody rung me and said, I need you to go here, no, because that's when I have my one-to-ones with my guys. So it's not going to work. I'm sure we can find a way around that. So being committed.
You wouldn't move a one-to-one? You'd never?
No, definitely not, because they're expecting it. They're prepared for it, they're ready for it, and if you move it, frankly, sometimes finding a place it fits in a time that doesn't suit them, it's just rude.
That's where I've definitely gone wrong, because I'd either forget them or I'd change them every week.
Right, I don't feel bad about that, because most do, but this person's your most important asset. It's also the most expensive asset. I mean, apart from your car in a car park, it's the most expensive asset in your business. And yet your time and their time is flexible. It doesn't make sense. You spend all that time and effort finding them, all that time and effort attracting them to your business, all that time and effort onboarding them, and the hour a week you had scheduled for them is a little bit flexible, and maybe if we could just get it down to 30 minutes. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
People are the currency of success. And it might not have always felt like working with me, but I've learned a lot more about that in the last 10 years, and I'd forgotten about it in the first 20 in my career. It's the currency of success. If you treat your people well, your business can't fail but grow. And you'll grow with it. So focus your time there. I mean, I'm not preaching to you, just generally.
I agree. Believe me, I definitely haven't got it down. That's why I pass it on to Mark and Callum. But
people time. Well, again, so first rule of management: hire people smarter than you at the things you're not very good at. Yeah. Absolutely, and I've had no success throughout my career, and would have had no success if I hadn't got good at that quick. I can't do that. Who can we get in that's good that does that? I'm not very good at that. Who can I get in that does that? And I still do the same now.
Yeah, no, great advice. So let's move on. So obviously you went to LogMeIn. That was your first big move into a NASDAQ company.
Yeah.
And how did that go?
Yeah, loved every minute of it. Not to go to Remington, but the reason I'm in Sandler is because of LogMeIn. Sandler's a system that permeates throughout LogMeIn and in all aspects of the client-facing business. But like I said, I was lucky in the fact I was part of a satellite business, perhaps not right in the heart of the headquarters, though I was there quite a lot. And so I could apply a lot of what I'd learned about growing a small business into a medium-sized one, into taking a medium-sized satellite into something that reflected LogMeIn's global status. And loads of fun. Again, really good people around me and really good partnerships. My internal partnerships at LogMeIn, same was true at Firebrand, were absolutely essential. And again, the time that I spent with the other managers in the other divisions, learning about them, learning about their challenges, coaching and mentoring them at times, mainly as an excuse for not admitting that I was making the same mistakes. It's wonderful teaching somebody else to do stuff. But that whole time at LogMeIn inspired me to going into the Sandler business because I just thoroughly enjoyed the selling system and all the other things that Sandler do, the leadership programs, and I just wanted to do it for more people.
Okay, so talk to me about you. So how long have you been at Sandler now? 5 years?
Just coming up. This is my 5th year.
Okay, and talk me through what you've done so far.
Worked with all sorts of people, everything from small independent photographers and hypnotherapists to some of the world's largest technology companies, the world's largest plastics recycler and manufacturer, but they prefer me to call them a recycler first. Massively augmented. I mean, it's how I ended up in the channel space again. Was many of the tech companies I was working with were what we called channel curious. They've got a good direct sales operation, they're making sales, but they really want to augment the business. Channel seems like a nice way to do it. I realise one of the problems of going into channel. I'm really sitting in and working, I guess, as an interim partner development director with them and helping them to build a world-class channel program. That's had some significant impact, doubling, trebling, and one particular organisation I can't remember, something like 171,000 times return on investment. They could argue we're undercharged, but it's been phenomenal. But I work with all sorts of different people, either in groups or direct in-house work, and I love it. It's just doing more of what I did throughout my management career. So I described my job, my role really as being everybody's favourite uncle. And the gift there is that, I get to give the kids back at the end of the day. I spend a day or two with them and we do some amazing things together. Then there's somebody else's responsibility. So it makes it a little bit easier than working with your own team. But I thoroughly enjoy it.
Fantastic. So as I said earlier, you are the first author I have had on the show, right. And your book, Making Channel Sales Work, a top 50 sales book for 2019. So very, very relevant and very current. So first of all, what made you make the crazy decision to even write this for the channel?
I don't like to make excuses, but it wasn't my idea.
Right.
The guy partner that I wrote it with, good friend of mine and the partner in Sandler, Marcus, wanted to write a book, I think is a fair place to start. And had a good look at the books on the shelf and the 1,001 tomes written about better selling. It didn't seem that we wanted something else just to collect dust on somebody's shelf. And both of us had been involved in channel, and we started to talk about a book that was for the channel space. Really for vendors, preferably for small to medium-sized vendors. And so we thought, well, somebody's already come up with this idea. There must be a cracking array of books on the channel. We found about 9. and
Only 9, really?
yeah, and eight of them weren't great. They were, traditional sales books with the word channel interspersed where it usually says direct sales. It said channel sales, but pretty much the same old stuff. As we that doesn't make any sense. We started to do a bucket load of interviews with the people that we knew in the channel and people we hadn't really met yet in the channel, and learnt a lot about what channel really is. This third party selling world, selling your wares through other people, and some of the massive frustrations, pitfalls, and some cracking experiences people were having with channel managers. So there was a real sense of good, bad, and quite a lot of indifferent in this space.
Because there's again, I'm going to apologise to my channel sales colleagues out there, but there is a serious opinion out there that people in the channel can't sell. That's the opinion. If you're in channel sales, you're a direct salesperson that can't sell. What's your opinion on that?
I tell you what we found through interviewing lots of people in the industry that there is a foundational truth there. Quite a lot of the channel managers that we interviewed, it transpired were really, really thoroughly nice people. They had a direct sales career, and they certainly weren't in the top 20, top 80 in reality percent of performers. Were quite liked in their world and seemed to fit this channel space. But really, it's just in many organisations about going out, having a coffee, asking them if they've got anything for you, and booking a meeting for this time next month. And so no, most of them, the ones that we met, the ones that we interviewed, and the ones that we were talked and told about were failed direct salespeople. Thoroughly likeable, and companies found a place for them. My colleague Marcus describes it as the Tim Nice but Dim theory. Thoroughly likeable people, but not a lot else going on. What we've learned, I think, is a lot of that's not their fault. There's not a lot of good material or good guidance for channel managers and even channel chiefs on what a good systematic channel program looks like. And so, not to give them an excuse, but there's not a lot of training that's directed to them being effective in their role. So it always reminds me a little bit of that scene in Clockwork Orange where he gets his eyes pinned open, and they get hit with all of this product training at thousands of slides a minute, and they go out and they just do the same thing. They think channel management and product management are the same thing, and they're not. There's real art to it.
Why do you think that is? Why is there a lack of training in that sector, in that channel?
I think there's a lack of real investment in understanding what it means. Again, many organisations start off building a channel as a get out of sales free card. It's we can't sell it ourselves. Let's go to the channel. Maybe they'll have a go and work it out. And if we keep just telling people what we do, at some point, some of this stuff will move. Classic phrase from right from the start of my career is telling isn't selling.
Yeah. And
most sales teams, you can see it. I mean, I've sat in some fairly big distributors' floors in London just watching their salespeople go to, such and such a vendor's in. And you can hear, that death march from Star Wars playing as they all sort of slowly move their way into the boardroom, knowing that they're just going to go in there for a 60-minute pitch from another vendor on products that nobody's even telling them who the client is, what the target audience is for this, what the talk track is, how do you get into the room and talk to these people about this stuff? What pains is that client experiencing that our product solves? It's just actually a little bit of, I see you had such and such vendor in yesterday. Sweep their stuff off the desk and replace it with your own. Nobody sells like that.
Why does it continue to happen then? Because it's still happening now, isn't it? 2019.
I think it does. I think there is an increased noise, certainly in the tech space, which is my heartland, where I spent all of my career. There's increasing noise around channel bad behaviour, and an increasing shift of power to the resellers, which makes sense, right? I mean, they're the guys out there on the ground doing the work.
End users, they're speaking to the end users,
absolutely.
Aren't they? Yeah.
The channel effective channel management is a win-win-win all the way down the line. The client gets the best possible product, your partner gets a profitable client, and you get a profitable relationship with your partner. If it isn't that triage of win-win-win, it's nothing. And sending in your red letter list of demands every month of how much have you sold, and you realise you're not going to get this much discount if you don't start selling more stuff. That doesn't work. Again, in anything in life, the currency of success is influence. And the founding father of influence is trust. And what the vendors, I think, big, small, or indifferent ones, lack at the moment is trust. The resellers don't trust them. The resellers believe that at any one given point in time, if I tell you that I've got this exciting opportunity, it will somehow or other, over a water cooler, get accidentally mentioned to your direct sales team, and suddenly it was already listed.
Yeah, because recently there was a couple of articles on CRN, HP aggressively going direct using their online store, and they're undercutting their own channel partners. So why would they do that? Why would channel partners of HP channel partners want to engage with HP if they're undercutting them on their online store? That's not viable, is it?
No, it's not long. It's not viable.
But it's happening.
But it's part of this 2% on tin mentality is pervaded for 35 years, or even worse. This don't worry about putting a margin on it because we'll call it back in our marketing development fund, the MDF, at the end of the year. That kickback that was supposed to be spent to generate new business is the only way that many of the resellers have made profit. Sometimes it does make sense for a vendor to have some form of direct model. It's not unusual. Dell managed to have a clear direct business for a long time before eventually deciding to open it up to the channel to find some growth. But it just it's the wrong approach. Somebody somewhere in the business has to stand up and say these are two or three or multiple different channels to our business, but let's not forget the people that got us here. You cannot use a channel as a marketing exercise to drive direct business, whether it's through your direct sales team or your online business, because they have choice.
But there is that sort of idea that you said it earlier. Let's get as much sort of brand awareness out for as many channel partners as we've got. They've got the badge or the logo, but actually we will undercut them. If we get an opportunity to undercut them, we will undercut them. So
it doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make sense.
It really doesn't make sense. The purpose of building a channel is to augment your sales operation beyond bums on seats in your own business. It's to have more opportunity. Actually, in reality, and we talk about it, a lot in the interviews we've been doing. Most people go out and build this channel as this army of ground pounders. If we get enough people pounding the ground, something's going to pop up. I truly believe effective channel management is more like building a special forces unit. You're clearly designated professionals that specialise. You have a very specialist skill, whether that be industry or technology, vertical, geography, that are highly trained, highly prized, and deployed very carefully in the right situations to get the right result. That's what an effective channel is. It significantly reduces your conflict in channel, and 75%, I didn't know this until about a year ago, 75% of world trade right now, and it's increasing year on year, goes through a third party. Goes through a third party channel.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
In the tune of something like $15 trillion globally is sold through third parties, through vendors. Coca-Cola is a fabulous example. Fired their entire direct sales force, and now all of their sales are done through their geographical bottling plants, their channel partners. That makes sense. It's a win-win-win all the way down the line. Cut out some of that kind of indirect and possibly for them inefficient resource within their business. But in the tech space, again, you cannot, I don't believe, sell technology anymore without a channel, because customers aren't buying one thing.
That's the key, isn't it? If you want to go to HP for desktops or whatever it is, you want a security solution or whatever, you can't get it from them. So you need to go to an established partner. So the resellers seem to have a very frosty relationship with some vendors.
Right.
How can they make it more effective if you're giving them advice? So obviously you've been researching this yourself. So how can they make a better relationship?
I fundamentally get why the resellers are frosty to their vendors, because there's no trust there. There's no relationship there, and there's little more investment than a couple of chocolates on your desk when they pop in once a month. It needs greater investment. As in hiring salespeople, I mean, this is what you're doing. You wouldn't hire a person and treat them like you do a channel partner. And what you're doing when you're onboarding a channel partner is onboarding a sales team. But the same thing, so you have to be careful about the recruitment process. Be careful about the acquisition process, the way that you're setting expectations in partnership of each other. And it should be for mutual benefit. And this third party in that story, the client, has to benefit from that partnership as well. And then what do you do with a new salesperson? From day one, you're investing time in them, you're onboarding them effectively. You have a clear system of accountability with them. You have a review system, both on a regular basis and more of that kind of, quarterly appraisal. I don't like the word appraisal. I managed to avoid them throughout my entire career. That's how much I don't like them. But having, some kind of valuable quarterly interaction between your team and their team about how are we growing our partner's business. If you focus on growing your partner's business, you don't have to worry about your own. If you focus on the investment of time in the right places, great training, great products, great incentives, great investment, and certainly focusing on getting new partners as quickly as you can to billing speed. Again, the success in partnerships is about getting them to the bank. Partnerships are coin operated. As a vendor, if your partner isn't making money off your products or propositions, there's somebody else coming in tomorrow. It's your direct competitor, and it's their partner, not yours. And they'll carry on having your logo on their website because nobody wants to miss the opportunity to sell one of your things once a year, but that's as far as you're going to get.
Yeah, because there seems to be a common theme when I've asked people that question about the vendors don't seem to want to invest in building relationships. They just want to turn up, do the little demonstration and chuck a load of t-shirts on the table.
Right.
Why is that happening though? Why do they just do that? Is it just an expectation? They're just thinking, well, if I get this name out to as many resellers as I can, hopefully they might sell something. Because it from an outside point of view, it just seems flawed completely.
It's a pyramid. Stuff flows downhill. I think it starts with little or no strategy at the top for a channel, which is very different from building a sales strategy. Very different. It's not massively different. It just needs to be much more focused on your channel. As you come down, it starts at the top. I think the leadership isn't right, which means the management isn't right. And if the management isn't right, the people on the ground aren't right. And it rolls all the way downhill. And then what happens, you've got this reverse pyramid the other way. You've got bad people versus bad people and bad managers and bad leadership. These two things, you see them in a mirror, both sides should line up. Leadership in the channel should be talking to leadership in the channel partners, management to management, people to people. And the currency all the way up and back again is insight and training. And I don't mean product training, because product training is overrated at the best of times anyway. That's why we invented the concept of pre-sales technical people, because you wheel them in when you need them, not up front, when the deal's qualified. Therein lies a bit of the problem between vendor. The vendor believes sometimes they're better at qualifying business than the resellers. And the resellers think they're better at qualifying business than the channel partner, and therein lies the conflict. You're doing wallpaper demos. You know what I mean by that? We stare at it long enough and it just doesn't change, like wallpaper. It's the same thing over and over and over again. None of it's designed for the end user client. None of it's designed with the partner in mind. Frankly, the partner invites the vendor along to do a demo, and they may as well not be in the room. They get mentioned once because suddenly it's vendor time, and they're cut out of the mix.
Why do you think? Funny enough, I went a few weeks ago to a company exponentially. And they were training some of their existing salespeople. So they invited me in as an end user customer, and I got loads of people ask me questions, etc. And I thought it was quite interesting because normally the training's aimed at apprentices and graduates, etc., and not very often at experienced salespeople. So I get a lot of, again, in the channel world, I've been here 3, 4, 5, 8, 10 years or whatever it is. I've got a book of business. I've got my customers. Those people don't get trained.
Why?
Yeah, why? So why are they not investing in their own existing salespeople? Because after a while, I think there's an idea that if you've been in sales for a while, you know everything, you just get on with it, you know customers. But there's a real lack of training of experienced salespeople. And is it because it's cost or?
I don't know. I wish it was true. I've been in sales now for 35 years. And I've even written a book on it once, and I make every mistake in the book most days, and sometimes 3 or 4 times. and I continually and always have throughout my career. And most of the the very successful people that were been in and been near and been around me are constantly asking me for stuff, or constantly asking me for training, or constantly asking me for coaching or consulting or mentoring or whatever. There's an ego thing sometimes when you've been around for a while. You don't want to admit your weaknesses, and you've probably got them. Or you might actually have just found yourself playing to your strengths and only your strengths, which is probably about 10% of your overall capability, which means that you're probably leaving about 90% of your revenue potential on the table through not getting trained, not using better systems or better tools or better approaches. And frankly, at the speed that sales is moving, let alone the channels redesigning and redeveloping itself, if you've been in sales 8 years and you haven't been trained for 7, you're exactly 8 years behind what's going on today. And you might be getting away with it on relationships. But relationships are massively overrated. They really are. The relationships in the channel and between channel partners, there's no such thing as relationships. Because it only takes a vendor that does the exact same thing with a slightly better looking and better price model for you to suddenly find, and it'll probably take a channel manager about 90 days to work out that he's got no revenue coming in from that partner, and they're buying from vendor X. So they need to train, and you should. I really struggle with this one, because as a sales professional, as in any other professional walk of life, you should be committed to at least, I think, 30 days of time invested in training a year as a bare minimum.
30 days. Now, no, I don't know many people that are getting 30 days at all.
So it doesn't really matter how you augment that time, if it's an hour a day or whatever. Find something you like, something you love that's augmenting and changing your skills and ability. People change, your audience changes, and the age of your buyer changes. As you start heading up into the 40s, 50s and 60s, the people that are buying from you that used to be the same age as you aren't anymore. They're the same age as they used to be, which is 20 and 30 and 40. And they think differently and they operate differently. They've got a different set of soft skills to the soft skills we didn't really have in the 80s and 90s. And so it's a massive mistake. I don't love this theory. I've stolen it from somebody else, but I meet a lot of people that have got 10 years of experience in sales. They've also had 10 jobs, which actually means that they've had 1 year of experience 10 times.
Yeah.
So that's it. I mean, they've got 1 year of sales experience just in 10 different places. And frankly, if they haven't made year 2 in most of those jobs, then it's not really any experience at all, except for the one of failure.
Do you think there's a reason, or there's people sort of think that sales isn't really a profession? It's just like you fall into sales, you just get on with it, and you have some relationships, and people don't see it as a serious job. It's almost like it's a job where you just start chatting to people, etc. And I think there's a lack of investment there. Do you think that's true? Well,
it's definitely true. That's why everybody wants to be a manager. I mean, nobody goes home to their mum and says, I'm a salesman.
That's a dirty word.
Yeah. It's how they invented terms like account manager and new business development representative and all of those things, because sales is a dirty word. I mean, it's only about 90% of what most business owners are doing at any given moment in time, but they wouldn't admit it in public. Tell somebody you're a sales trainer and see how quickly they find other people at a networking event. So I love it. It's one of my favourite things. Hi, I'm Dave, I'm a sales trainer. Good, anyway, lovely to meet you. Yeah. It is a profession. It's a huge amount of money, time, in good organisations, investing in making their people phenomenally good at people. And that's what sales is. The ability to have a great conversation with a complete stranger about stuff they don't want. And that takes time to learn. There's more to it. There's more psychology in it. I mean, this is why I love our industry. Understanding people, understanding the way people work, the way people think. There's a whole raft of things that you learn about in sales that you never thought you would. Get really, really good at it. Your confidence building. Just the ability to walk up to somebody you don't know and strike up a conversation. I mean, it's a phenomenal opportunity that's mostly described as, what do you do? I work in a business. I'm an account manager. I can't stand that phrase. Doesn't mean anything. So it's still a dirty word, but it's a phenomenal profession. Sandler's recent research study coming out of our research centre tells us that less than a third of salespeople globally right now are hitting their numbers. And that might be why, that might be a reflection of this belief still that it isn't a profession, that anybody can do it. That you know, put my job centre story to one side, it's not for everybody. Not everybody can do it. Not everybody can do it well, and there's a tiny proportion of this industry still today, I still believe less than 10%, that can truly call itself a professional, because it doesn't see itself as one, and so it doesn't train itself like a professional does. It doesn't get certified like a professional does, and it should.
Because there's no what's the word, professional training. There's a few of them out there, isn't there? Professional training where you've actually got letters after your name, etc. But there doesn't seem to be, not, you know, if you're a techie, you can say you're certified and you've got X, Y, Z training. In sales, it's almost like, well, you've gone on this course and then it's forgotten.
When you become, you know, a fellow of something or a member of something, but most of those, I remember being a fellow of the Institute of Sales and Marketing Management. People used to go, well, who are the Flintstones? Yeah. They've shortened that now, which I quite like. But there are a few good organisations out there that are trying to drive this industry as a professional. But I think, again, they're a bit fragmented. They're a bit, you know, they tend to look a little bit like a front for another sales training company. It's trying to put their sales training and the profession together. It needs something somewhere, some independent association to really bring it together. And I'm surprised one of the unions, for example, hasn't just gone, we've got all these people and none of these people. Perhaps we can bring that together and create some kind of professional program behind it. I mean, in Sander, we're one of the only, and I'd say we're the only, apart from that nice printed certificate you get at the end of the course, with a proper test-driven certification program, which I'm certified, and I encourage all of my clients, but not all will, to get certified, because it makes a difference. I mean, this is the world's largest and a global recognised selling system. So yeah, it's a certificate that means something.
Great. So in terms of sales techniques and social selling, so this is a big debate that I get on with people about what the difference is, or should they be using a mixture of the two, or can I still just start cold calling, or should I just be messaging people on LinkedIn? What's your views on the differences now in 2019, how people should be selling? Should they be using social selling, or should they just be sticking to old school tactics that they did in the 80s and 90s?
Well, look, fair rule is nobody likes prospecting. We just know we need to do it. I mean, I've tried myself to stare furious at the phone for 8 hours and it didn't ring. So you're going to have to do something. I think it's a blend. For me and my business and a lot of the business I work with, I encourage them now to go out networking. And I don't mean, you know, beers after an exhibition.
Hand your cards out and hope they're going to call you. Yeah.
I mean, learning how to get good at networking and going to local or national networking events to really augment your sales ability. Cold calling still works. I still make 50 cold calls a week. I talk to between 5 and 10 people a week.
You really make me 50 cold calls?
Yeah.
Really?
I won't teach things that I don't do, apart from time management. We'll talk about that another day. But it's a discipline. Prospecting is like everything else. It's a discipline, and done little and often, it doesn't frighten you. And by the way, I don't do it for conversations. I do it because it's a discipline. And when I have those conversations, it makes me a better trainer, and I get better clients because of it. And if you know who you want to do business with, waiting to see if they pick up the psychic signal or the universe answers your call isn't going to work. You need to ring them, tell them why they want to work with you, what it is that you do that makes a difference in their world. And if they want to meet, that's great. And if they don't want to meet, that's okay too. I mean, 35 years of hearing no, you kind of get used to it.
Get used to the rebuttals.
I'm all right with it. And then this social selling thing, I love the fact that it's a wave, because one of the first people in the UK to use LinkedIn, and I'm probably up to about, I can't remember, something like £92 million worth of revenue tracked direct from cold LinkedIn connections. And so I've been social selling now for over a decade, but it's like a new thing. I mean, there are a lot of new platforms you can use, but LinkedIn for me is an essential source of leads, connections, conversations, interviews, insight, the books written on the insight that people that we met through LinkedIn gave us. So use both. I typically, when I'm training it, we'll do the prospecting, the calls bit in the morning, and in the afternoon then we'll bring LinkedIn and we'll layer that over the top of the cold calling mechanism. So you're using two things as a blend. But if you go one way, don't start to think that everything you do on LinkedIn is prospecting, because 95% of everything you do on LinkedIn is noise making.
Yeah, and there's a lot of noise out there. If it's not good content, if it's not good noise, you're just going to it's going to be just a blur. And
there is
on LinkedIn, yeah, it's
got to be quality stuff. And there are some really good people on LinkedIn. There's some really good people providing really good content. There is a lot of trash.
A couple of days ago, I read an article on CRN again. Computer Centre, Mike Norris said we're in the middle of a super cycle over the last 5 years. So if you're a reseller over the last 5 years, if you haven't made money over the last 5 years, you're doing something wrong. So what's your view on the outlook now for the channel and resellers in the next sort of 2 or 3 years? Good, bad?
I think it's good. I think if people don't hear this message that right now 75% of world trade is going through third parties, and I'd say you'll see the increase in that 5% year on year to perhaps a point where it's significantly most. But Channel is saying you cannot sell technology as a vendor anymore direct to end users, because they want more. They want a more blended solution. They want more blended services. They want the right expertise deployed at the right time in the right place, and you don't have them. And so the channel is essential to these organisations' success. And I do agree with Mike, it is a super cycle. But there are many resellers out there that haven't made any money in the last 10 years, and frankly because they were running their business in the 10 years before. The plus 2% tin business. Or the don't worry about making a margin, we'll get it back in MDF.
It's nuts, isn't it?
It's the vendor's fault. They created a marketplace that was overly competitive and not quality or service driven. But the owners of the older channel partners have got to change their mentality. Profit's everything in business. Not rolling the bones on whether you make some back at the end of the year or not, because the vendor A might not be there, or quite often at the moment are changing their marketing development fund programs to stop that behaviour, because they want long-term relationships with great service partners who get fantastic results for the client you both own, because it's both your client. And so he's right. I think if you haven't made money in the last 10 years, something's not quite right. But this investment in getting it right has been pretty poor, and I don't know whether that's ego or availability anymore. I don't know whether there's so much ego in our industry that people won't invest. This isn't a pitch for me, but invest in good external people coming in and helping you to grow your business, either at business coaching level or your people level. The investment in the management and leadership layer is still incredibly poor. There's expectation that what got you here will get you there. It doesn't. It's a definite shift change in your mentality and behaviour, and that needs a lot of investment and a lot of external help. And outside of that, there's quite a few business brokers right now that are circling, because some of the bigger resellers are looking to concatenate the market. So they're looking for acquisitions, people they can bring into their network, so that you end up back maybe with a few superpowers. There's a risk to the market when you get that, but it makes sense right now for some of those MSPs and resellers to perhaps give up and let somebody else take over.
On that point of self-development, do you think it's on the onus on the company to provide the training, or do you think the individual should look at themselves and think, I should actually do some self-learning myself?
I think therein lies the difficulty, isn't it? If you want to get good at something, whose responsibility is that? It's not somebody else's. If I want to learn guitar, I've got to pick the thing up and start strumming. I do think it's a shared responsibility. Some organisations are still struggling to make the investment because salespeople are seen as transitory. Most people don't realise that they're transitory for a reason, and because what they're getting in your business isn't what they want, and they'll go somewhere else to find it. If you create a learning environment and a people-oriented business, I think you can't get rid of them. They'll stay for as long as they possibly can. Look at the awards that we give out at Firebrand now. 15 years of service on the sales line, and that's because that's a business that continues to really invest in its people, giving them what they want, what they need to be furiously good at what they do. But it's a two-way street. if I put you on a sales training program and you don't turn up, you'd be surprised how often that doesn't happen.
Really?
Or we've got some online learning elements and other things we've done to augment our business, and you can see the time that people spend on it. You just think, I don't know what it is that you're doing instead of this to improve your people skills, your communication skills, and your ability to win business. But it's because it's not drawn as a profession. It's because it's not designated in there. Perhaps we don't say to salespeople, you're here for 8 hours a day, and I want you to take 2 of those to get really, really good at what you do. And what do you need from me to do that? You're going to spend 8 hours of a working day probably only spending, it's like being a professional footballer. You train all week for 90 minutes. It's the same salespeople, really. You're training all week just to be good in those 90 minutes. When you get in the door and you have that meeting. So it's a two-way street. If you've got people that aren't willing to invest in getting good at what they do, at some point you're going to give up yourself.
Okay, my last couple of questions. If you were a young graduate or an apprentice or someone trying to get into the industry, which part of the channel would you suggest going into? Reseller, distributor, vendor, system integrator, MSP?
I think they all offer different experiences and different value. I tend to advise people to go into smaller business first, and I know it's not what your mum wants to hear. She wants you to bring home, I got a job at Microsoft. Doesn't really matter what it is. Some will tell me work for Microsoft. There's something about the cut and thrust of a good young business that I think graduates get. Far more blooded, far more broad experience. They get to see more of a business. They're less itchy-feeted, looking for the next big thing, because it opens up this myriad of career opportunities that perhaps are harder to spot in the bigger businesses. I do encourage people to go and work for a bigger business at some point, but I think find something that's probably a bit smaller, sub 100, maybe sub 50, and get in there. It's a lot more fun, it's a lot more exciting, and I tell you what, when you sit at a desk in a small business and you make a big sale, you see the impact it has on everybody. I mean, absolutely everybody, from the top to the bottom. And they're all coming to shake your hands and they're all coming to spend time with you, and you can see the difference that thing you did made on that company. And that's the thing I loved about my career, was when I did good things, big things, it would double, treble, quadruple the size of the business. And there's no feeling like that. And there's a different experience when you go and work for a bigger company. But graduates need, I think, to get broader business experience first before narrowing their field of vision to what they really want to be.
Yeah, great advice. And my last question, if you were going to give a piece of advice to either a contributor or a sales manager or sales leader, if they wanted to make a name for themselves, what's the one bit of advice you'd give them?
From a management perspective, invest as much of your time as you feasibly can in your people. And I mean, proper, structured, professional one-to-ones where you go in as the coach mentor, not a supervisor. Get a clear system of accountability and then spend all of your time, every ounce of energy you have, in making the people that work with you or for you, depending on what your attitude is, great. Because it's the quickest way to get to where you're going. If you've got a team of great people, you're always a great manager.
Brilliant. David, thanks so much for your time. It's been a great interview.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us and listening to another episode of our Channel Chat podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard and are listening on iTunes, please could you give us a review and subscribe in order to get the newest episodes as soon as they're released. Otherwise, as always, we release an episode every Thursday at midday, so hopefully you can join us then.